Move! Move! Kid, grab your brother! Go!
He pushed them! That man shoved those kids right in front of me!
Oh my God, Day! I saw it! They came out of nowhere!
I swerved to miss him. I swear to God, I swerved to miss him.
Isn't that one of the guys from the labor corner?
Travis wasn't listening. He had a 6-year-old screaming on his ribs, an 8-year-old going quiet under his arm.
Look at my finger, both of you, eh? Follow it, follow it. Good. Can you both wiggle your toes for me?
The boy was screaming. Good. That meant an airway. The girl's silence was worse.
Stay with me, sweetheart. Don't talk. Just squeeze my hand. There it is. Good girl.
Sir, step back from those children!
I've got a shoulder. It's mine. Do the kids first.
You need to let the medics work.
One conscious, one quiet, possible shock. Go. Copy that, medic. Get on the girl right now. The firefighter moved before he thought about it, then went still. He'd heard that clipped cadence exactly once before, a long way from here. Holloway? Trav, is that you? Travis didn't look up. She's going shocky. Keep her flat. Keep her talking. Trav, where the hell have you been? That man threw those kids in front of my car. I want him held. The polo shirt was still going, louder now, and Travis had already turned his face away from all of it. For about 90 seconds, in the eyes of the people gathering on that corner, Travis Holloway had been something close to a miracle. It did not last 90 seconds more. Here is who he was to the town. Before that afternoon, nobody. A tall, thin man with a gray-shot beard who stood at the labor corner most mornings and got picked for the jobs nobody wanted, hauling, demolition, clearing out the houses of the dead, and got paid in cash and disappeared by dark. He lived out of a 20-year-old pickup with a camper shell, and in the truck with him lived a 9-year-old boy named Jude. And if you had asked anyone in that town who Travis Holloway was, they would have said the homeless guy, if they could place him at all, and they would not have known that he had a son, or that the son was the whole reason the man got up in the morning, or that they read to each other every night by the light of a headlamp because the truck's dome light drew down the battery. They would not have known that Jude Holloway kept a brass coin in his jacket pocket, worn smooth on both faces, that had belonged to a man named Riggs. They would not have known that there was a housing voucher from Veterans Affairs sitting one signature deep in a caseworker's inbox, the thin thread that was about to lift the two of them off the street and into an actual apartment with an actual door. And they would not have known that a soft-spoken woman from the county named Ms. Hadley came by every couple of weeks to make sure the boy was fed and in school, and that she liked Travis, and that she had been quietly, carefully, on his side. And they would not have known how the two of them had ended up in that truck, because nobody had ever asked. There'd been an apartment once, and a job at the parts warehouse, and a woman named June, who could get Travis to laugh on days he'd have sworn it wasn't in him. June had been the one who held the whole thing level, who sat with him through the bad nights, who knew which sounds to keep out of the house, who told him he was more than the worst half-second of his life, and almost made him believe it. Then 2 years ago, she found the lump too late, and the cancer took her in a bad, hurried autumn, and after that, the level was just gone. Travis missed shifts he couldn't explain to a foreman who didn't want to hear it. The warehouse let him go. The apartment followed the way apartments do, one impossible month at a time, and one gray morning he'd loaded a 9-year-old and 2 duffel bags into a truck with a camper shell and told the boy it was an adventure. And Jude, who was old enough to know better and kind enough to pretend, had said, "Okay, Dad." That was the man the SUV was about to hang a felony on, not a drifter, a widower who'd run out of hands to help him hold the level. Hy took Jude to the free clinic that night for the shoulder they popped back into its socket, and Jude sat in the plastic chair and swung his legs and watched his father's face the way he watched it for weather. "Did you catch them?" he asked. "The kids in the street. Somebody at the shelter said a guy got hit by a truck saving some little kids, and I knew it was you before they finished saying it." "I caught them, bud," Travis said. "They're fine. Eat your crackers." "Does it hurt?" "Everything hurts a little. That's just Tuesday." He nudged the boy's knee with his good hand. "You do your reading?" "You always say that. Because you always try to skip it." Jude grinned, and then the grin slid off his face because he was 9, not 5, and he'd already heard the other half of it at the shelter. The half where a man in a polo shirt was telling everyone who'd listened that Travis was the one who'd done it. "Dad, the guy in the car, he said you pushed them. People are saying it." "I know what they're saying." "But you saved them. You got hit. I saw your jacket." "It's not always that simple, bud," Travis said, and that was the most true and most useless thing he could have told him. And he knew it, and he ate his own crackers so he wouldn't have to say anything else. The town chose the man it already knew. His name was Chase Whitlock, and everybody knew him and everybody liked him. He was 34, and he coached the high school football team that had gone to state 2 years running, and he ran the youth league on Saturdays for free, and he emceed the fundraiser when the Delgado kid needed the wheelchair van. And his face was on a banner outside the community center under the words, "Our Hometown Heroes." When a man like that stands at the edge of a bad afternoon with tears in his eyes and says a homeless stranger threw 2 children into the road, the town does not reach for the security camera footage. It reaches for what it already believes. It is so much easier. By the next morning, the story had set like concrete. An unstable transient, a drifter, they were saying now, a guy with a psych history, you could tell just looking at him, had shoved 2 little kids off the curb, and beloved Coach Whitlock had stood on the brakes and swerved, and by the grace of God only clipped the man who caused it. There were people online already starting a fund for Chase's legal fees in case the transient tried to sue. There were people saying they'd always thought that corner wasn't safe with those men loitering there. A detective took Travis's statement in a gray room and didn't write much of it down. "Coach Whitlock's got no reason in the world to lie," the detective said, not unkindly, which was somehow worse. "He's got a spotless record and about 400 character witnesses. You've got no fixed address, a bad conduct discharge, general discharge under honorable conditions, and 2 psychiatric holds in the file. So walk me through why I'm supposed to take your word over his." He leaned back. "You see my problem." Travis saw his problem. He'd seen it a long time ago, in a different gray room, on a different continent, and he'd learned then exactly how much a quiet man's version of the truth was worth against a story everybody wanted to be true. He said nothing, and the detective wrote that down. The town, meanwhile, was busy being sure. The online fundraiser for Chase Whitlock's legal defense crossed $4,000 by the second day, complete with a smiling photo of him in a whistle and a windbreaker. And the comments underneath it were a quiet civic riot. People who'd always said that corner wasn't safe. People who'd always said those men shouldn't be allowed to loiter by the park where children walked. People who had never once looked at Travis Holloway, now certain they'd always known. Chase himself gave a short, tearful statement to the local station, standing in front of the community center with the banner behind him. And he was good at it. He said he didn't blame the man, that he understood mental illness was a terrible thing, that he only hoped the children could heal, and that maybe this would start a conversation about getting people like that the help they needed. It was masterful. He made his lie sound like mercy, and the town loved him a little more for it. The labor corner dried up overnight. The foreman who used to point at Travis now looked through him, or worse, said his name to each other and laughed, and the cash work that had been keeping diesel in the truck and food in the boys stopped with a suddenness that felt personal because it was. And Jude came back from school on the second day with a split lip he wouldn't explain and his jaw set in the way that meant he'd swung first. And when Travis finally got it out of him, it was that a kid named Bricker had said Jude's dad tried to kill 2 little kids for fun, and Jude had said, "Take it back," and the kid hadn't. And so, "I'm not sorry," Jude said, holding a wad of gas station napkin to his mouth. "I'd do it again." "I know you would," Travis said, and cleaned him up, and did not tell him not to, because there are some lies a father can't quite bring himself to sell. They charged him 2 days later, reckless endangerment of a child, assault. The words sat in his chest like swallowed stones, but they were not the thing that took the floor out from under him. The thing that took the floor out was Miss Hadley, standing at the back of his truck with her clipboard held against her chest like a shield and her eyes wet because she was not a cruel woman and she hated every word she was about to say. "Travis, I have to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you say anything." She swallowed. "There's a criminal charge now, endangering a child, and I have a 9-year-old living in a vehicle with the man the charge is against. The county won't let me leave him here, not with this open." The world went very quiet and very narrow, the way it had gone once before, on a road, with a car coming. "He's my son," Travis said. "I know. He doesn't have anybody else. His mother's gone. You know that. "I know that." A tear went down the side of her nose and she didn't wipe it. "That's why I'm telling you myself instead of sending someone. Right now, it's an emergency placement, temporary. While it sorts out, if the charge is clear, we start over. But I have to take him Thursday, Travis, and I would give anything not to have to. And there is nothing you can hand me before Thursday that changes it unless it's proof." Proof. He had until Thursday to turn a story everyone wanted to believe into a lie everyone could see, and all he had to trade for it was the one thing he'd spent 8 years making sure nobody here would ever know about him. Jude took it worse than the shoulder, worse than the truck, worse than anything. "You didn't do it," he said, and his voice was doing the thing where it climbed to keep from breaking. "You didn't do it and they're taking me anyway. That doesn't even make sense, Dad. Tell them who you are. Tell them what you used to be." "Jude, You could stop a car. You saw it before anybody. Cal said that fireman, he knew you. He said you were the best he ever saw at... The boy scrubbed at his face, furious at his own eyes. Tell them what you used to be. Travis crouched down in the gravel behind the truck so they were eye to eye. And he held his son's shoulders with both hands, the bad one screaming, and he didn't care. And he tried to find a way to say the size of it to a 9-year-old. The last time I told them what I used to be, he said quietly, I stood in a room full of people who outranked me, and I told the whole true thing, and when they were done, they wrote one word on it. One word. Hesitated. And that word cost a man his life on paper, and it wasn't the true word, but it's the one that stuck, and it never came off. He pressed his forehead to Jude's for a second. Telling the truth about who I am has never once saved me, bud. Not one time. It just gives them a bigger thing to hang me with. Then what do we do? I didn't have an answer, and that was the worst part. And Jude saw that he didn't, and neither of them said anything else. Cal Renner found him that night at the truck, and Cal was the one who said the past out loud, because Travis wouldn't. You want to tell me why the best vehicle threat man in the whole battalion is living in a Ford and letting a used car salesman in a golf shirt hang a felony on him? Cal sat down on the tailgate uninvited, the way only a man who'd bled next to you can. I've been trying to place you for 2 days. Then I watched you clear that little girl's airway and I about fell over. Trav, that's you. That's the guy who read the road. And because Cal already knew, Travis let a little of it out, the way you let out a wound that's gone septic, because keeping it in was finally killing something worse. He'd run entry control points. That was the job, downrange. You stood at the mouth of the wire and you read the vehicles coming at you all day, every day, and you decided in about a second and a half which ones were a family late for something and which ones were a bomb. And you were right, or people died. He got so he could read a windshield at 100 meters, read the driver's hands, read the way the chassis sat. He was the one they put on the gun because he was the one who was right. And then there was the day a sedan came in too fast and wouldn't stop, and everybody on the line was screaming the escalation, and his thumb was on it, and in the last half second he saw 2 kids' faces in the back seat. Small faces, a girl and a boy pressed to the glass. Oh, and he held. He held his fire, and he was right. It was a family, a father who'd panicked at the checkpoint and stamped the gas. No bomb, no wire, nothing but terror. He saved all 4 of them. But the whole line's eyes had gone to that car. Every rifle, every set of eyes, locked on the fast sedan for that half second. And the real thing, the thing they'd been sent to draw out, came from the flank while everyone was looking the wrong way, and it took Riggs. Took him clean, before anybody could turn. And when the after-action was written, it did not say Holloway correctly identified a non-hostile vehicle and prevented the deaths of 4 civilians, including 2 children. It said the fire team's attention was fixed by a delayed escalation of force decision. It said, in the part everyone actually read, that he hesitated. And Riggs's mother got a folded flag, and Travis got a general discharge and a coin that had been in his friend's pocket, and a thing in his chest that never once let him look at a child's face in a car window again without the whole floor tilting. You saw the kids in the back seat, Cal said, and his voice was rough. You were the only one who saw them, Trav. You were right. Riggs had been 23. He'd had a laugh you could hear across a motor pool and a habit of carrying that brass coin as a good luck piece. And a fiancée back home he wrote to in tiny cramped print because he was cheap about paper. He'd been the one who kept Travis human on the line, who'd make a joke in the worst minute of the worst day, who called Travis the road whisperer and meant it half as a joke and half not, after they'd handed Travis the coin from Riggs's pocket like it was a thing you could give a man to make it even. And Travis had carried it every day since. And somewhere along the way it had migrated into a 9-year-old's jacket because Jude had asked whose it was, and Travis had told him a little, and the boy had held on to it the way children hold on to the pieces of their parents they aren't allowed to fully see. It was, Travis sometimes thought, the only inheritance he had left to leave the kid, a dead man's luck and the weight that came with it. Tell that to Riggs, Travis said. Cal was quiet a while. Then he said the thing that put it all back in front of them. There were 2 kids in a crosswalk on Tuesday, and you saw them and you moved and you didn't hesitate for 1/10 of 1 second. He put the brass coin, Jude had shown it to him, the boy trusted him already, down on the tailgate between them. You've been paying for that half second for 8 years. Don't you let this coward add your kid to the bill. That night, Travis sat in the cab with the keys in his hand and did the math he'd sworn he'd never do. He knew how to disappear. It was, in a bad way, a skill. He could have the truck packed in 20 minutes, be 3 states away by the time anyone thought to look, become a rumor, a guy who used to stand at the corner, whatever happened to him. No trial, no felony, just gone. And Jude beside him the whole way, safe, his. The instinct to vanish was so strong it had a taste. But he sat there, and he made himself follow the road all the way to the end of it, the way he'd once made himself follow a windshield all the way to the truth. If he ran, he'd be teaching his son that when the powerful decide you're guilty, the only move a poor man has is to run, that the story is always right and you are always the thing it can be hung on. He'd be proving every comment under that fundraiser correct. And somewhere out there was a little girl who'd watched him take a truck for her and now had to live inside a lie about it, and a body shop with an appointment to erase the one witness that couldn't be scared, and a man in a whistle sleeping just fine. Running would let all of it stand. He put the keys back in his pocket. He was done running from rooms that wouldn't hear him. This time, he was going to build one that would. Chase Whitlock's SUV went in for repairs the morning after the charges were filed. That was the detail that finally lit a fire under Cal, because Cal had spent enough years around wrecks to know what it meant when the one vehicle that could talk suddenly had an appointment to stop talking. He couldn't do anything about it himself, but he knew a man who could, and he went and stood in front of that man's desk until he listened. Sergeant Kittredge ran crash reconstruction for the county, and he was 50 years old and tired and entirely gloriously indifferent to what any town wanted the story to be. He listened to Cal with his arms crossed, and then he uncrossed them. You're telling me the vehicle's already in a body shop? Booked the morning after, same day the charges hit the veteran. Kittredge's jaw worked. Cars don't get nervous, and they don't lie, and they don't book themselves into the shop 3 days early. He was already reaching for the phone. Modern SUV like that's got an event data recorder in it, airbag module, record speed, throttle, brake, steering for the 5 seconds before a crash, and it does not care whose face is on a banner. If that module's still in the vehicle, I can pull it. And there's a traffic camera on that signal head. City owns the feed, not the coach, and a man's cell provider keeps his records whether he wants them kept or not. He looked up at Cal. You get me a preservation order before that shop accidentally swaps the airbag module, and I'll get you the truth. The car will tell me who was on the gas. It always does. It became a race measured in hours. A preservation order has to be drafted and signed and served, and a body shop that has been told quietly by someone with money and standing that a certain airbag module ought to get swapped out during the course of ordinary repairs works on its own schedule. Kittredge drove the paperwork through the courthouse himself, standing over a clerk, and Cal drove across town to the shop and simply parked in the bay entrance with his arms crossed and his EMT windbreaker on and refused to move his truck, making a nuisance of himself that the manager couldn't quite call the police about, buying minutes with his body the way Travis had bought a crosswalk with his. Chase Whitlock, in the meantime, was doing what men like Chase do when they think they've already won. He was relaxed. He'd been seen at the diner holding court, accepting sympathy like a man accepting a casserole, telling the story with small new flourishes each time. He was not worried about a black box because it had not occurred to him, not once, that the machine bolted under the seat of his own truck had been watching him the whole time and did not care that his face was on a banner. Travis saw him once, in those days. He'd walked to the pharmacy for the boys' inhaler refill, and there was Chase Whitlock across the street outside the diner, in a knot of people who kept touching his arm, and somebody's grandmother was pressing a foil-covered plate into his hands, and Chase was doing the humble thing with his shoulders, the aw shucks thing, and for 1 second his eyes came up and found Travis on the far curb. And Chase Whitlock smiled at him. Not a cruel smile, something worse. A small, comfortable, certain smile, the smile of a man who has already counted the votes. Travis felt the old thing rise in him, the thing that had been trained to read a threat and end it, and he stood very still on the curb and let it pass through him and out the other side, the way he'd once held his fire with his thumb on it, because a man who moves too soon gives the other side the story. He turned and walked home to his son. He could wait. He had learned, at a terrible price, exactly how much can hang on the half-second you don't act. They got the order served with an hour to spare, and a very unhappy body shop manager handed over an SUV with its secrets still inside it. But the data would take days to pull and certify, and Thursday was coming, and there was a piece of this that no black box could ever hold. The piece that mattered most. Her name was Piper Vaughn, and she was 8 years old, and she had seen everything. She had seen the man in the car looking down at the bright rectangle in his hand instead of at the road. She had felt her feet leave the ground when a stranger hit her like a wave and felt the world spin and felt a body curl around her and her little brother and go stiff as the truck screamed past. She knew, in the complete and wordless way that children know things, exactly what had happened. And she had not said one syllable of it to anyone because she was 8, and the man everyone believed was Coach Whitlock, who ran the fun runs and gave out the trophies, and the man everyone was angry at was the scary one who'd knocked her down, and the grown-ups had already decided. And who was going to believe a kid over over all of that. So she kept it behind her teeth and had nightmares and told her mother the car was loud and then a man was on top of her, and that was all she'd say. She won't talk about it, Renata Vaughn told the detective, holding her daughter's hand too tight in the waiting room. She just says the car was loud and then somebody was on top of her. I keep telling her the homeless man can't hurt her anymore, that Coach got him away from them. She said it, and something flickered in her own face when she said Coach got him away from them, some first hairline crack in the concrete, and she pushed it down because she needed the story too. She needed the man who'd been near her babies to be the danger, and not the beloved Coach she'd cheered for, because one of those meant she'd been unlucky, and the other meant she'd screamed the name of the man who saved them at a camera. And Wednesday night came, the night before they were going to take Jude, and Travis Holloway made a decision that had nothing to do with saving himself. He'd figured out, lying awake in the truck with his son breathing beside him, that the data might clear his name, but it would never be enough. Not fast enough, not clean enough to stop Thursday, and not the kind of thing that unrings a bell in a town that had already decided. The black box could prove he hadn't pushed those kids. Only a person could prove Chase Whitlock had lied. And there was exactly one person in the world who'd seen the truth with her own eyes, and she was 8, and she was terrified. And Travis Holloway happened to be the one man alive who understood down to the bone exactly what it costs a child to say a true thing that the grown-ups don't want to hear, and exactly what a child needs in order to be able to say it anyway. It frightened him more than the truck had. He knew exactly how much damage a grown man could do to a child by reaching for the truth the wrong way, by wanting it too much, by leading, by making the room feel like a place where there was a right answer she was failing to give. He had spent 8 years unable to look at a child's face in a car window. Now he had to sit still and steady in front of one and be the safest thing in the room, when everything the town had said about him for a week was that he was the most dangerous. If he got it even slightly wrong, he wouldn't just lose his own son. He'd teach this little girl that saying the true thing gets you handled, and she'd carry that the way he'd carried his half-second. The stakes weren't just Thursday. They were her. I didn't sneak up to her. He'd have died first. He went to Cal, and Cal went to Kittredge, and Kittredge, who was starting to smell the shape of it, arranged it the right way, in a room at the county building with Renata Vaughn present, and a child advocate. And every rule followed, because a truth pulled out of a child the wrong way is worthless, and Travis knew that better than anyone. And then they let him sit down across from Piper Vaughn, this ragged man she'd been told to be afraid of, and he didn't lean in, and he didn't ask her what happened, and he didn't say a single word about himself. "Hi, Piper," he said. "My name's Travis. I'm not going to ask you any questions, okay? Not one. I just want to tell you a couple things, and then I'll be done." She stared at him, wary, her mother's hand on her back. "The first thing is, your little brother's name is Rowan, and he's home, and he's okay. And that's because of you as much as anybody. Because when I grabbed you both, you held on to him. You didn't let go of your brother. I felt you not let go." He let that sit. "That was the bravest thing anybody did that day. Braver than anything I did." Something in the little girl's face moved. "The second thing." He kept his voice very even, very low, the voice from the checkpoint, the voice that had once told 4 terrified strangers in a language they didn't speak that they were going to live. "I know there's a thing you saw, and I know you haven't said it because you think nobody will believe you, because you're just a kid, and everybody's already sure. And I want to tell you something I know for a fact, because it happened to me a long time ago." He turned Riggs's coin over once in his fingers and put it away. "One time, I saw a true thing that everybody wanted to be a different way, and I was scared to say it, so I said it small and quiet, and they wrote it down wrong, and a person I loved paid for that. For years, I thought the lesson was that saying true things doesn't help." He shook his head slowly. "But that wasn't the lesson. The lesson was that I said it to people who didn't want to hear it. You've got the other kind. You've got a whole room of people who are finally ready to listen. That's the rarest thing there is, Piper. A room that's ready, and it's yours, right now, for as long as you want it." The little girl looked at her mother, and then at Kittredge, and then back at the strange gentleman who'd made himself a wall between her and a truck, and her chin started to shake. "You don't have to be brave," Travis said. "You just have to say the one thing you already know is true. I'll be right here, and this time I promise you," his own voice caught just once, "this time they'll listen." Piper Vaughn opened her mouth and closed it and opened it again, and in the smallest voice in the world she said, "He was looking at his phone. The man in the car. He was looking down at his phone the whole time." She started to cry, and it came faster now, the way water comes once the first crack goes. "And you didn't push us. You pushed us out. You pushed us out of the way, and the truck hit you instead of us. I saw it. I saw the whole thing, and nobody would let me say it." Renata Vaughn made a sound like she'd been struck. "And And Travis Holloway, who had not let a room full of people look at his face in 8 years, sat very still and let this one child watch him come apart, quietly, with gratitude, because she had just done the thing he had never been able to do. She had said the true thing to a room that was ready, and it had cost her everything for 4 seconds, and then it had cost her nothing at all. The data came in the next morning, and it married her testimony like two halves of the same key. Kittredge laid it out flat and merciless, the way only a machine's memory can. The SUV's event data recorder had the last 5 seconds frozen exactly as they'd happened. The vehicle at 41 miles an hour in a 25, throttle steady, and then this was the part that ended it. No brake input at all until 0.3 of a second after the impact. The truck did not brake to avoid anyone. It braked after it had already hit a man. The 40 feet of skid on the asphalt started precisely where the black box said the driver's foot finally found the pedal, which was after. Chase Whitlock's phone records, subpoenaed from a carrier that had never heard of him, showed an outgoing text message composed and sent in the seconds bracketing the collision. And the city's traffic camera, which belonged to no one's reputation, caught all of it in flat gray daylight from above. 2 children in a crosswalk on a walk signal, a vehicle that never slowed, and a man crossing the frame at a dead sprint to throw both children clear of the lane an instant before the grill arrived, throwing them out, away, to safety, his own body turning to take what they would have taken. The car never braked until after it hit him, Kittredge said, to the detective, to the DA, to anyone who'd spent a week being sure of the opposite. The driver was texting. Those kids didn't get pushed into anything. They got thrown clear. By him. He tapped the still frame. I don't much care what's on a banner. This is what happened. The charges against Travis were dismissed that afternoon, and the same machinery that had moved so fast to believe a coach turned slowly and then all at once on the man it had crowned. Chase Whitlock, who had run the fun runs and given out the trophies, who had looked at 2 children he'd nearly killed and reached past them to point at the most disposable man on the street, was charged with reckless driving, with falsifying a police report, with everything the county could reach, and the town that had started a fund for his legal fees quietly took the banner down off the community center, and nobody started a fund for anything. The reckoning, when it came, was the small, ugly kind that towns actually do. No grand apology, just a slow, embarrassed reversal. The fundraiser vanished as if it had never existed, its $4,000 refunded in silence. The foreman who'd looked through Travis at the corner suddenly had work for him again, and were a little too hearty about it, and he took the jobs because a man with a son takes the jobs, and he did not make it easy for them, and he did not make it hard. A woman he'd never met knocked on the truck one evening and turned out to be Bricker's mother, who stood there twisting her hands and said her boy had something to say and pushed forward a red-faced kid who mumbled a sorry at his own shoes. And Jude, to his enormous credit, said it's okay and mostly meant it. And Ms. Hadley came back on Thursday after all, not to take Jude, but to bring him home, driving him herself, and she cried in the front seat where she thought neither of them could see, out of relief and out of shame at a system that had made her the hand on a good boy's shoulder. Jude got out of her car and crossed the lot at a dead run and hit his father the way his father had once hit a crosswalk, all in, no brakes, and Travis caught him with the bad shoulder and didn't feel it at all. Renata Vaughan found Travis in the parking lot of the county building, where he'd gone to sign the last of the papers that would bring Jude home. She had Piper's hand in one of hers and Rowan on her hip, and she stopped a few feet away and could not, for a moment, make any words at all. "You put your body between my kids and a 2-ton truck," she said finally, "and I stood in a parking lot and told a police officer you were the one who did it. I said your name like it was a curse. They're okay," Travis said. He looked at the 2 children, the boy who didn't remember him and the girl who would remember him her whole life. "Your daughter's got more nerve than most grown men I served with. She's the one who fixed it, not the cameras, her." He crouched down to Piper's level, the way he'd crouched for Jude, and he said, "Thank you for the room." Renata's hand went to her mouth. "I told her not to talk to strangers," she said, half a laugh, half a sob. "And the only stranger in this whole thing who ever told her the truth was you." "I'm not much of a stranger to a truck coming," Travis said. "That part I know." Piper didn't say anything. She just walked the 2 steps over and hugged him hard, around the neck, the way a child hugs when she's decided something about you, and then she went back to her mother, and that was the closest thing to a ceremony that Travis Holloway would allow the world to give him. Because there was no ceremony. The town wanted one. There was talk, once the story flipped, of a proclamation, a plaque, a photograph, key to the city typed on somebody's agenda. And he turned every bit of it down without raising his voice. He didn't want to be the man on the banner. He'd seen what happened to the man on the banner. He wanted a door that locked and a boy who slept behind it, and he wanted nothing else for a very long time. The real thing happened in the cab of the truck. The night he got Jude back, before the voucher cleared, when it was still just the two of them and a headlamp. Jude had the brass coin out, turning it over in his fingers the way his father did. "You saw the kids in the car," the boy said, not a question. He'd gotten the whole story out of Cal. Piece by piece, the way kids get things. The one in the war and the ones in the street. You saw them both times. Travis was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car went by on the wet road, and out of a habit he would carry to his grave, he watched its nose to see if it meant to stop. "Both times," he said. "Tell me about him." Riggs. The boy had never asked straight out before. He'd only ever held the coin and wondered. Not how it happened, just him. So Travis told him, small things, the safe things, the things that don't cut on the way out. That Riggs had been a terrible cook and a worse singer, and that he'd carried that coin because his own grandfather carried it, and that he'd had a way of saying it's a good day for a good day that made you believe him even when it wasn't. That he'd called Travis the Road Whisperer. That the last thing he'd said about an hour before was that he wanted a real hamburger and he was going to eat 2 of them the day they got home. Jude listened the way he listened to nothing else, and when Travis ran out of words, the boy nodded slowly, like he'd been given something and meant to keep it. "He sounds like he'd have liked you," Jude said. "He'd have liked you better. Everybody does. They told you that you hesitated." Jude's jaw was set and his eyes, which were his mother's eyes, were full. "But you didn't. You just saw the kids first. You always see the kids first." He closed the coin in his fist. "Riggs would have wanted you to still see them. He would. You can't be the guy who stopped seeing kids in cars just because it cost you something. That's the whole point of you, Dad." And Travis Holloway, who had not let anyone all the way in since a road on the other side of the world, let his 9-year-old son see the entire thing at once. The soldier and the father, the half-second and the 8 years, the grief and the stubborn, unkillable thing underneath it. And he pulled the boy across the bench seat into his good side and held on, and neither of them said the next part because it didn't need saying. The voucher cleared 11 days later. The apartment was small and it smelled like other people's paint, and it had exactly 1 bedroom, which Travis gave to Jude, and a couch, which was his, and a front door with a deadbolt that actually turned. The first night, Jude fell asleep in an actual bed for the first time in almost a year with the brass coin under his pillow, and Travis stood at the window for a long time, watching the street the way he always would, reading the nose of every car that passed to see which ones meant to stop. He counted them without deciding to. He would always count them. Somewhere out there, a man in a whistle was learning what it cost to point at the wrong person, and somewhere further back, a friend named Riggs was still 23, and a little girl named Piper was sleeping easier tonight than she had in a week, and a boy who was his was breathing slow and safe down the hall behind a door that locked. On old habit, he'd have it forever. But for the first time in a long time, he was doing it from the inside of a home, looking out, instead of from a corner, looking for the next thing that might take everything. If there's a person you've written off, the one on the corner, the one you step around, the one you've already decided about because of how they're standing or what they're wearing, do me one favor this week. Look again. Look at what they do, not what they look like, because the truth about a person, same as a car, is in the motion, not the face. And the quietest, hardest-used people on your street are very often the ones who'll turn their back to the grill for a stranger's kid without stopping to think about the cost. A cost they are usually, quietly, already paying.